Hi everyone, welcome back to our third episode of this new series all about Canadian taxes in FO. So in the previous two episodes, we have covered the high-level Canadian tax rules and also focusing on the configuration points within the second episode. So if you have missed that part, please feel free to check it out from the link I put in the description box. All right, so for this session, we want to talk about how those tax values get defaulted on transactions, because one of the reasons we request a default value is you don't expect to have operational users to know exactly, which tax group I should select on this transaction, or what item I should use in this case for my item tax group. So to avoid the manual errors or additional confusions, we want to make sure all the master data has a kind of a default tax group or item sales tax group assigned, and based on that business logic, the relevant tax code is going to be flowing into your transactions. So first we'll have a refresher on how Dynamics is calculating tax, and then I'm going to give you a detailed explanation per transaction type for purchase order, sales order, or project transactions, how we can define those default values, right? So now to start with, let's have a quick refresher on the sales tax calculation. As I said previously, we have two components, right, in Dynamics to calculate tax. One is from the jurisdiction perspective, meaning the customer or vendor, where they're located or where that item is shipped to or received from. And that's we call sales tax group, right? And then the second component is more related to the item or actual service, and that could be taxable, non-taxable, or different rates, right? So we have listed that part here as well. In our scenario, we don't have a refined level per item group saying, okay, if that's an audio product, then this is the tax rate. If that's a service type of product, then that's this group of rates. So we haven't done that for this scenario, just to make it straightforward to understand. But certainly you can do that if the customer requires, right? So based on that, on a specific transaction, so in this case it's going to be a sales order, the system is going to check what are the available values of tax rates within the sales tax group, and then what are the values within item sales tax group. And then the system is going to find that common rate or rates to apply for the calculation on this particular transaction. So quite straightforward. Now the question is, okay, I have configured those two components, great. How I can assign on customer, vendors, and what's the default value the system is going to pick up on the transactions. So with that, I have kind of a list per transaction type for a purchase order, for a sales order, or project transactions. So in this episode, it's really a high-level review to help you understand. And then in the following episode, I'm going to do it through a live demo on an exact transaction, so you can really see what's the defaulted value used, right? And also provide some flow charts going forward. It can be helpful. Okay, so now let's start with purchase orders. Now what I listed here is if a sales tax group is assigned on the company warehouse address, then this value will be defaulted on purchase order line. Secondly, if there is no sales tax assigned on warehouse, then that vendor sales tax group from the vendor master will be defaulted on PO line. And finally, if there is no value that can be found through company warehouse or vendor sales tax group from the master data, then the PO line will have a blank value on the sales tax group field. So you have to manually select if you want to calculate tax. So when you read between the lines, it may sound confusing, but now I'm going to give you an example to help you better understand. Okay, so I'm going to open up my system. I have a new vendor account. Let's just call it Home Depot 1. And I have a default group. I have mostly the information set up. But now, let's see, you should have a field here under Invoice and Delivery, a value called Sales Tax Group, right? And from this list, you will be able to select the different value we created. So check out the second episode. For example, if this vendor is in a group GST, then I'm going to assign this GST value. So now if I start creating a purchase order, the sales tax group on that transaction is going to be picked up from this value we assigned on the vendor master GST, right? So that's basically on our PowerPoint, the second point. If there's no sales tax assigned on warehouse, then vendor sales tax group will be applied. So we'll check that out. I'm going to open up a new tab, and then we're going to create a new purchase order. Okay, now let me create a new purchase order. We're going to select this vendor account. Okay, so fast forward, what you're seeing now is a purchase order I just created with this new vendor, Home Depot, we just reviewed, right? And on this specific line, I want to record a transaction on the advertising type of service with the quantity 1, unit price 230. So now I want to know on the specific transaction, what does the system suggest as the default sales tax group and item sales tax group, and where those values are coming from. So to check that, then you need to scroll down and get to this line details and their setup. You're going to see this item sales tax group and sales tax group values. So currently on item side, I have this all V2 assigned. And actually this value is from your item master. So on a specific item, you're going to see a field called item sales tax group having this value. And then you're also going to have a second component, sales tax group. This value GST is actually coming from your vendor master. So that's what we have created previously, right? I can go back to this Home Depot, and under invoice section, you will see the sales tax group here is assigned GST. So this is how the system defaults the sales tax group. Now you may have the question coming back to this PowerPoint. The first point is saying, if the sales tax group is assigned on the company warehouse level, then this value is going to be defaulted on the purchase order line. So basically from what we read here, level 1 has the top priority. If there's a value on the warehouse side, then this value is going to be assigned. And if there is no value, then that's your sales tax group, right? What we just checked is the step 2. So now let's go back to the system and see, in case I change the sales tax group on my warehouse, then you're going to see that value has a top priority. So to do that, I need to go back to my purchase order, and under product, you can see I have a site and warehouse. Currently it assigns to GP, so Grand Prairie. I'm going to click on this hyperlink that brings me to this warehouse details. Okay, now let me stop at the address side. Now this address is basically where your warehouse is located, right? Actually the place where you receive that item. So this address is considered when you do the tax rules application, meaning that if I ordered an item from Ontario, but I received in GP, in my case, Grand Prairie warehouse, then the Grand Prairie jurisdiction will apply. So that's why you can also define a default sales tax group on the warehouse address level. So in my case, I'll pick this primary address, and then you can do advanced. And if you scroll down, then you see under general, we have the sales tax. Now I'm able to select, okay, for this one, let me just use a different value. Let's say, okay, I want to apply MB/PST for my warehouse and save it. So now you basically tell the system on my warehouse GP, my default sales tax group is MB/PST. So this value has a top priority. It should override whatever sales tax group you assign on the vendor master side. So let's check that out. And let me go back to the purchase order. I'm going to create a new one just to make sure the change has taken effect. And I'll put the vendor account, the Home Depot, and then I will choose my warehouse, Grand Prairie. Okay, so we can continue to create a line, and then within this line, okay, now let me pick the same item number, advertising. All right, and give a unit price. So now let's check out the tax group, whether it changed it to PST. Okay, I'm going to line details, and under setup, you can find item sales tax group. It doesn't change, it's all V2. from that item master. And then the sales tax group now is becoming MBPSC, actually defaulted from the warehouse level. Even though my vendor doesn't change, my vendor always has that sales tax group GST assigned on the vendor master. So you can see clearly the warehouse has a top priority compared to the vendor master. So if I remove that default value sales tax group from the vendor and also remove from the warehouse address, then on this PO, you'll see the sales tax group becomes blank. So that's basically what I'm trying to explain from this PowerPoint. And similarly, for a sales order, it's basically the same, meaning that sales tax group normally is assigned on your customer master, but you have a more prioritized level, which is based on your customer delivery address. So on your customer delivery address, if that's based in Ontario, then that's HST that is applied on your sales order transaction. However, if your customer has a group called GST, that means on your sales order transactions, that Ontario HST will still prime from that delivery address. The reason is, let's say your customer may have different delivery addresses, and depending on where that item lands or shipped to, that specific delivery address jurisdiction will apply, right? So that's why you can have one default value on your customer master, but depending on the delivery address, you certainly have the priority to override that default value on your customer master. So let's say if you don't have that delivery address set on the delivery address, then your customer master data, that sales tax group, will prime. And again, if there's no value assigned nowhere, then that field will remain blank. Regarding project transactions, so quite similar. On project side, we will have project contracts, and on that contract, the sales tax group is actually coming from your customer master data, so that customer sales tax group on the master data level. And then on the parent project, you also have a sales tax group that's actually inherited from the previous contract sales tax group. And in case you're using sub-projects concept, then those sub-projects is going to carry the sales tax group assigned on the parent level, right? And then finally, for all transactions happening on the sub-project, they will have the sales tax group defaulted from the sub-project. So I think this one is quite straightforward. And in the following session, I'm going to give you a specific example and a demo so you can really see how the value is defaulted, and also with some flowcharts. Hopefully that helps to clarify a bit more. All right, I think that's everything I want to cover for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next one.